Hello everyone, my name is Rajiv and this is Selective Malts. Now before I go any further, I want to thank everyone who's been sending me comments, good or bad, who have been subscribing to this channel and who have been basically giving me views to the channel. This is the reason why I'm on my third video already. So thank you so much, every single one of you who has been giving me the encouragement that I need to continue making these videos. Before I go any further, I want to tell you why today's video is special. This video has been made possible because someone who I've been working with for the last 5 years, who I can safely call my friend, has decided to leave the company I work with, and he has sent me this gift. What is this gift? Let's go ahead. But before I go any further, thank you so much, Ashok, for sending me this bottle. This one is for you, buddy. The gift that I have today in that box is the Bruichladdich 10-year-old Port Charlotte single malt whiskey. As always, let's talk about the name of this whiskey. So far, we've had a good time. We had Rampur, we had Lagavulin, nothing complicated. This one, however, is going to test a few people. So, in normal, typical English, you just say Bruichladdich and get on with it. But if you're a Scotsman, and I apologize to any Scotsmen out there, I'm going to give it a shot, you call this Bruichladdich. There's a strong h sound there, which I think, being a nation, we do a very good job of. Let's get straight into the history of this distillery. The Bruichladdich distillery was founded in 1881 by three brothers, William, John and Robert. What is special is that these were not your ordinary first-timers. They had a rich history of being in the distillery business before. In fact, this was the third distillery that they founded or were part of. But this one they founded individually, all three of them founded from an inheritance they got. What was special about the distillery is by the time the distillery got ready, there was a falling out between the brothers, and only one of the brothers ended up running the distillery, and unfortunately, even he didn't have a great time of it. The first original Bruichladdich distillery actually burnt to the ground, and we can talk about the history a little bit more, I guess. And it was refounded. But what is special about this distillery, and I really need to make sure we mention this, this has almost all its equipment still maintained from the Victorian era in which the distillery was originally founded. What is special is that even today, Bruichladdich is very proud of the fact that they do almost all their distilling from the old method of working. There's no computers used in distilling. They use almost all the original equipment from the Victorian era. So this is a special distillery. What is also special about this distillery is that it is also located on the Isle of Islay, which basically means it shares a rich peaty heritage with whiskies like Lagavulin, with whiskies like Bowmore, and also Ardbeg. In fact, we will absolutely get down to those whiskies in the future as well. What else would I like to tell you about this whiskey? There is a special edition of this whiskey called the Yellow Submarine. There is a very interesting story about it. Long story short, people thought that this distillery was being used for spying purposes, but when they discovered that was not the case, the distillery decided to honor that incident and called it the WMD as well as the Yellow Submarine edition. It's two different stories, but you know what I'm getting there. Let's talk a little bit more about this before we go into the actual unboxing and drinking of this whiskey. What is so special about this whiskey here is that it honors its Port Charlotte heritage, because that is the village that is closest to this distillery, and they'd like to keep that heritage going. So that is something that I did want to clearly mention and call out about this distillery here. Something I do want to mention is that Bruichladdich sources a majority of its malt from the Isle of Islay as well. So basically the malt, the distilling, the water, everything is as locally sourced as you can get it. In fact, this is why the Port Charlotte edition is very proud of that fact and mentions it on the front right here, that it's conceived, distilled and bottled in the Isle of Islay on Port Charlotte. Before I go ahead and open this, let's take a quick peek at the back, and this is where it gets a little interesting. So on the back, if you look closely, it actually has the engraving on the glass, or the embossing on the glass, whichever way you want to call this, and it talks about how it is it talks about how it is distilled on the Isle of Islay. It is single malt and it is from Port Charlotte, and of course the most important thing, is it mentions the original distillers over here. I didn't do much research on this because I think it might become too much of a history lesson, but it does mention all those facts on the back of the bottle. Let's get the Glencairn glass into the focus. Let's go ahead and remove the shrink wrapping around the top of the bottle. Get rid of that right there, and let's go with our signature pop there. Now, first things first, let's talk about the pouring and talk about the color of the whiskey. By the way, this is the first time I'm also experiencing this, so you're going to get a clear first time impression of the whiskey. So before I go any further, there is something that I did forget to talk about, which I do want to talk about. Now, unlike your typical whiskeys, which were in the 40-43% range, this one over here is actually 50% alcohol by volume, which is pretty strong. So this one might hit you and get you high much faster than your standard 40 something ish whiskeys. It's not cask strength, but when we do a cask strength whiskey, which I do have one of, we'll talk about how that is even more stronger and can get you high much faster. But let's go ahead and talk about the color of the whiskey. So as you can see, it's a little cloudy, it's not clear, and it's like a typical peaty whiskey that you would expect. So this one is heavily peated, and they usually measure. So one thing that Bruichladdich does is measure how many parts per million in terms of peatiness there is. This one is 40, and if I ever get my hands on what is officially or unofficially, depending on who you are, what is officially the most peaty whiskey in the world, which is the Octomore, we may get to see how many parts per million the Octomore has in terms of peatiness. Let's get down to the best part, which is going ahead and tasting and rating this whiskey. Right, let's get down to it. So as always, I have found the official notes about this whiskey from the Bruichladdich website itself, and I'm going to be reading them off right now. So apologies if I'm not looking at you guys, but I do have to read this out. So it says, the smoke is claimed by the marine ozone character. While the smoke is always discernible on the nose, it is dry and earthy in style, allowing the oak to come forward with waves of golden caramel, fudge, vanilla, custard, hints of ginger, nutmeg, and clove. And there's more. There is a citrus fruit coaxed from the glasses with a drop of water, gentle lemon meringue and clementine. Breathe deeply and the floral aromas of wild thyme, heather, and sea pink transport you to the Atlantic coast. Okay, that's a lot. Let's just get down to the smell. I can smell the peat. There is definitely a little touch of, or rather there is that ozone smell. Again, I'm a chemistry graduate, so I know what ozone smells like. There is a little bit of that, but nothing very strong. And yeah, you can get subtle hints of the fruit, but nothing exceptional or mind-blowing. So obviously the description is always from a master distiller's point of view, and if I could experience all these notes, I would probably be a master distiller myself. So yeah, let's get on to the best part. Let's get to the palate, but before I do that, let's read off what the website says. It says, on the palate, there is a noticeable delicacy and softness in texture and style. Again, the balance of flavor is superb as the smoke wraps closely around the sweetness drawn from deep within the oak. And yes, I forgot, in the nosing, the oak is also very evident. And I should be getting coconut, vanilla, custard, and lemon honey combines with smoked oysters and sun-baked salty sand. Let's see how much of that we can pick up, or how much of that actually is there. Cheers. Oh yes, this is so delicately balanced, I must say. It's got the peatiness there. It's got, oh yes, absolutely. It's got a very velvety texture and so smooth for a 10-year-old single malt. I'm impressed. And yeah, and the cloudiness is evident as you let it settle in a little as well, by the way. Did I get the salty sand texture there? A little bit of it, yes. One thing that I'm already detecting, and which will probably come up when I read the notes, is it has left my mouth a little dry. That could be because of the high alcohol content in it as well, or it could be by design, similar to the Rampur. Let's read the finish and figure out if that was the case. So the finish is sublime, smoky, sure, but with soft sweetness of fudge and malted barley. Orange mango, Banff pie signal the depth and quality of the oak. And yes, I must mention that the oak is very evident here. It's got a woody texture to it, very good and beautifully balanced indeed. Now let's get on to rating this whiskey. Right, let's talk about the ratings. First things first, on the appearance of the whiskey. Unlike the limited edition Rampur that we did last time, it's a pretty plain bottle. It does have a little bit of engraving on the back, but it's not something that would stand out to you in terms of bottling. In terms of the actual appearance in the glass, it's nothing exceptional, nothing that would stand out or spring out to you saying, wow, this is different. I think I can rate this a 6 on 10. In terms of the nosing and the aroma, it is definitely peaty, proudly peaty. You can make out it's heavily peated as the bottle advertised. It does have a complex aroma, it's just not all peat. They have managed to preserve a lot of other textures that come through, like the ozone, like I said, from the chemical point of view, and there's a slight smell of some complex herbs and fruit there as well. I would give this a 12 on 20. Let's talk about the best part. That is when it's on your palate and you're coating your palate with this whiskey. This whiskey is well balanced. One thing that I will give it good marks for is that the peat does not overpower the other flavors or the other aromas that are also part of this whiskey. So on a scale of 1 to 30, I'd give this a 24 on 30. Let's talk about the finish. I'm going to give this a very high rating on the finish. Unlike other whiskeys which are in and you don't get much of a difference, as and when the whiskey settles down in your stomach and you feel the peat come up, there is a different set of flavors that come in your mouth, and that is majorly down to the finish of this whiskey. I'm going to give it an 18 on 20 in terms of the finish, a very high rating. Now, keeping everything in mind, the overall experience, the bottling, the flavor, the aroma, everything thrown together as an overall package, I'd give it a 15 on 20 in terms of what it brings to your collection. Now, let's talk about the overall rating of this whiskey. If you add up all the points I've given there and the score, I would rate this as a 76 out of 100, which means it is a good whiskey. The question is, for what it is worth, should you be buying this whiskey? Now, two things to keep in mind. This bottle here is priceless. It's a gift from someone very close and someone I'm really proud of having worked with. So let's not talk about this one. But if you were to go and buy this off the shelf, it is around $110 in Canada for $110. And if you're looking for something particularly peaty, I would definitely go ahead and buy this. If you had $110 and you could only buy a single whiskey that was from Islay and which represented Islay, I'm going to stick with the Lagavulin 16 instead. If you can afford both, don't even think about it, go for it. If you liked what you saw today, I would appreciate a subscribe, I would appreciate a like, and above all, I appreciate any feedback that you have for me. I'm trying to improve this channel. I'm looking for sponsors and I'm looking for people who would give me an opportunity to work with them. So hit me up, and all of you have a great day.